let's be honest, when you don't text him back, part of you wonders, is he even thinking about me? Does he even care? Or worse, what if he's relieved I stopped texting? That silence, it can feel deafening, but what if I told you the moment you don't respond, that is when the real story begins in his mind. And it's not what you think. As women, we've been conditioned to believe if I don't respond, he'll lose interest. If I wait too long, he'll find someone else. So we chase connection, we over-explain, we double text, all in an effort to keep the conversation alive. But here's the twist. Men don't connect through constant communication. They connect through space, through wondering, through the unknown. When you go silent, it doesn't equal disinterest. To a man, it triggers something ancient, the need to pursue, to wonder, to assess your value. So many women feel a wave of anxiety when they don't text back right away. It's almost automatic, this fear that if we don't keep the conversation going, we'll lose him, that he'll think we're not interested, or worse, that he'll simply move on. And that fear, it's not coming from logic, it's coming from a deeper place. The fear of being forgotten, replaced, or not valued unless we're constantly present in his life. We've been taught subtly and constantly that silence is dangerous, that if we're not showing interest, someone else will. And so we get caught in this exhausting loop of over-communicating, over-explaining, and overextending. We reach out again just to check in, just to keep the thread alive. But what we don't realize is that this response is rooted in fear, not power. It's about chasing, not choosing. What most women don't understand is that a man doesn't lose interest when you pause. In fact, he starts thinking when you do. Unlike women who often connect through words, men connect through space, through wondering, through the tension of not knowing. And when you break that tension too soon with a message driven by anxiety, you rob him of the chance to step into his masculine energy and pursue. It feels counterintuitive, right? That holding back could actually build interest. But here's the truth. When you don't text back immediately and you're not seeking constant reassurance, you're signaling self-trust. You're saying, I don't need to force connection. I don't chase energy. I attract it. That energy is magnetic. It tells him you're not desperate to be chosen because you already choose yourself. So instead of filling the silence with panic, try this. Pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what version of me would respond from confidence, not fear? Let that version guide you. You're not being cold, you're being clear. And when a man is met with clarity and confidence instead of anxious over communication, he feels it, he respects it, and more often than not, he responds to it. So what actually happens when you don't text back? At first, he might feel in control. She's just busy, no big deal. But as time passes, and especially if he's used to you always being available, doubt starts to creep in. He starts thinking, did I say something wrong? Is she losing interest? Why isn't she chasing me anymore? And here's the powerful part. In your silence, he has no script to follow, no emotional reassurance. And that is when you become valuable in his eyes. Not because you're playing games, but because your energy is no longer on demand. At first, when you don't text him back, he probably doesn't think much of it. Maybe he assumes you're busy or just having a day. If he's used to women being instantly available, he might not even register your silence as a shift. But if he's grown used to your attention, your quick replies, your emotional investment, your pause creates a space he's not prepared for. And that's where it begins. As more time passes, something starts to change. He notices your absence more than your presence. Why? Because he's no longer receiving the constant confirmation that he still has your interest. He starts to feel a subtle imbalance, like the emotional control he had is slipping. And that thought stirs discomfort, not because he's in love just yet, but because he's no longer sure he's winning. That's when the internal questions begin. He replays the last message. He reads into your tone. He wonders, did I say something wrong? Why hasn't she responded yet? And if he had been pulling away or playing it cool before, your silence flips the energy. Suddenly you become the one that's unpredictable. And it's in that unpredictability, not in availability, that curiosity is born. Curiosity for a man is powerful. It drives his attention. His thoughts loop around your name, your unread message, the gap in your response. You've introduced a question mark where he expected a period. And the mind hates open loops. It wants resolution. But when you don't give it, when you don't rush to explain or reassure, he has no choice but to sit with the unknown and feel it. Here's the truth. A woman who doesn't instantly respond creates emotional tension, not the kind that pushes someone away, the kind that draws them in. She becomes a mirror. She reflects back to him his own desire, his own fears, his own uncertainty. And in that silence, he's forced to ask himself, do I miss her? Do I want to fix this? Am I losing her? And those questions are how feelings start to deepen. Let's make this clear. Not texting back isn't about being cold or manipulative. It's about balance. It's about emotional maturity. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to not fill the silence with your fear, to let him feel your absence, to trust that the right man won't be scared off by space. He'll be pulled toward it. Remember, men don't miss women who are always there. They miss women who know their worth, even in silence. Texting back isn't about trying to manipulate him. It's not a strategy to get in his head or make him chase you out of confusion. That kind of energy, game playing, is short-lived, and men can feel when it's forced. What we're talking about here is something entirely different. It's a silence that comes from inner peace, not panic. A quiet that says, I don't need to overextend to prove my worth. Too many women have been taught that if they don't speak, they'll be forgotten. So they fill every gap in communication with effort, attention, reassurance. But silence, when it's rooted in confidence, becomes a boundary, a form of emotional self-care. It says, I don't owe you constant access to me. It shows that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee, and that is what earns respect. When a woman stops chasing and starts trusting her own timing, her energy shifts. She no longer texts to be validated or noticed. She chooses when to engage, not out of fear he'll leave, but from a place of self-worth. And that kind of silence is powerful because men can feel the difference. They sense when a woman isn't just playing hard to get, but truly comfortable with being hard to reach. You don't need to punish him with silence. This isn't about coldness or withholding affection. It's about giving yourself space to feel, to think, to choose, not just react. Sometimes we're so focused on keeping someone interested that we forget to ask, is he even worthy of my energy? Silence gives you that pause, that space to reconnect with your standards instead of lowering them for approval. And remember, real self-respect doesn't need to scream. It doesn't beg, chase, or convince. It's calm, it's still, it's intentional. When you don't text back out of confidence, not bitterness, you send a quiet message. I'm not afraid to lose someone who doesn't truly value me. And that energy, that's not a game. That's the beginning of emotional leadership. That's what high-value love is built on. So the next time you're tempted to text, ask yourself, am I reaching out because I want to or because I'm afraid he'll forget me if I don't? You don't need to chase to be remembered. You don't need to speak to be heard, because when a high-value woman stops texting, the right man starts thinking. And that is the